immediately above those around you. We don't live by what we see. Paul said, we look not at the things which are seen, but the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. I was told the other day about a church in Alabama. They had a revival meeting. Alabama Baptist Church had a revival meeting. It lasted 3, 4, 5 days, whatever it was. 40 people in that church now have been tested positive for COVID-19. 40 of them. Now, I don't know if some of them are asymptomatic, as they say, and some of them may be on ventilators right now. Who knows? But 40 people have been tested and for COVID-19. All right? Now, they were having a revival. They were serving the Lord. They were trying to do something for their soul spiritually. But God allows things to happen to us for our own good. Let me encourage you tonight about something. Don't shake hands with each other. Don't shake hands with each other. When you come into this place, treat it just like you're going to Walmart or you're going to the grocery store. Because you need to understand this plague is real. We got some nutcases on the internet calling it a...
When we see Pleiadian ships, we see a sphere of light, because it's the Merkaba movement.
Hello everyone. So this is actually the video that was gonna happen after the Santa video I made, in which I said it wasn't literally about actual Santa. It was about a point that was being made, and Santa was just the means by which to make that point. Today I want to make a point about something, and I feel like the best way to illustrate that point is to use the 1998 Jim Carrey film, The Truman Show. Because this year, all year, I've been having what I feel like are these little epiphanies in my own life. Some things have been dawning on me, actually almost seemingly continuously all year, even back to what the media is now referring to as the before time, which they're actually calling anything prior to March the before time now, I've noticed. But it led me to rewatch this movie, and I hadn't seen it for a really long time. I'd watched it several times in the past, probably, I don't know, half a dozen times or something. But now I've watched it in that hindsight is 2020 way, and I got something out of it this time that was completely different than any other time that I've watched it. And so that's what this video is about to be. It's just something that I feel really compelled to talk about, and it's actually kind of hard to talk about, so I don't know. Here we go. If you haven't seen The Truman Show, this video is totally going to spoil it. So for those people who've not seen it and don't want it spoiled, maybe come back to this later. If you have seen it or you just don't care, here we go. Basically, The Truman Show is about a man who was adopted by a corporation as a baby, and he's walking around in a world that he doesn't realize is actually a giant Hollywood studio set, where everything he does all day long, 24 hours a day, is being secretly filmed on an intricate network of 5,000 hidden cameras. And every person around him, from his parents to his wife to his best friend to even the strangers he bumps into on the street, they're all actors. They're all playing a role in his life. So he's being secretly filmed his entire life since he was actually in his mother's womb, and has grown up in this false reality completely his entire life. And at the beginning of the movie, it seems like he doesn't really recognize fully that this is the situation that he's in. The director is Kovd, and in the opening scene of this movie, the very first line of the film, you have Kovd saying, "We've become bored with watching actors give us phony emotions." Everybody who's watching is already being manipulated from the moment the show begins. On purpose, by design, because it's part of what is being illustrated from the second this movie begins till the credits roll. And the statement also makes this claim that Truman's emotions, because he's the star of the show, no matter how manipulated they are still somehow real, right? Because that's not an actor with phony emotions. It pushes this message that you can be completely manipulated and all your emotions can be manipulated too, but it still counts as genuine. Even though at the very best you could describe this movie as gaslighting, and that's in the very best. scenario for what's going on in this film. It's actually really disturbing if you sit and even think about the plot of this movie for 5 minutes. It's really, really messed up. I mean, this is getting the audience to accept not only watching a man get manipulated his entire life from the time that he is born, actually before he's born, and making the audience complicit in that, but also they're being manipulated too. So everyone's being manipulated. That's kind of the message here, and that's from the moment the film starts. That somehow we're just all okay with sacrificing a baby for entertainment. Which, interestingly, Truman's first line, which he thinks he's saying to himself in the privacy of his own bathroom, just by the way, but he's being secretly recorded even in there, is about how he's gonna have to be eaten. Just,
Damn it. That's an order.
Take from that what you will. Christof continues that while Truman's world is somewhat counterfeit, there's nothing fake about Truman himself. Which is a lie. Because we're being told right away, Truman lives in a completely manipulated environment. So all of his actions and all of his reactions to everything that's happening are programmed. I mean, Truman is through and through a psychologically manipulated person. We as an audience throughout this film only get to see glimpses of who he wanted to be or who he may have been if he wasn't being constantly manipulated into the role that he plays in his life by every person in his life, all of whom are complicit in conditioning him to behave in certain ways which he has been programmed to behave. So he's a slave. Truman's a slave. This movie is about slavery. He's a slave who doesn't realize he's in bondage because his prison has all the appearances of what he's been told is a normal, expected life. And because it doesn't literally blatantly look like a prison or a cage or a cell or whatever, he doesn't fully recognize that's what he's in, but his life is a prison, and he is a slave inside of it. And the whole world is watching this. And Christof goes on to say that many viewers like to leave Truman on all night for comfort, which actually says a lot more about the people watching Truman than Truman himself. I mean, it just sounds like Stockholm Syndrome to me. We get introduced to this cast of the basic characters. We have his wife, Meryl, who comes on and tells everyone there's no difference between her private life and her life, married to Truman as an actress on The Truman Show, which in one sense makes sense because she never probably gets to leave the place, but she calls it a noble life. So playing the role of a character in a loveless sham marriage who psychologically manipulates her tricked fake husband into a false reality is now being defined as a lifestyle, which the audience again accepts. I mean, the plot unfolds and we find out this woman is actually trying to coerce Truman into having a baby with her so they can have the first on-air conception and continue this cycle into another generation of continuously filming another life. So that's not a noble life, it's a noble lie, but she calls it a truly blessed life because it actually has the blessing of the masses. The majority of the world that participates through watching this whole twisted thing as quote-unquote entertainment. But if that's not sick enough, Truman's so-called best friend Marlin, a man who wears an earpiece so Christof can feed him his lines, comes on and says, well, it's all true, it's all real, nothing is fake. Nothing you see on the show is fake, it's merely controlled. Which, I don't know, I feel like that's a semantics argument, because I'm pretty sure it's not just merely controlled, it's completely controlled, and therefore it's fake. So, 5,000 hidden cameras placed throughout this fictional set. Even Truman's wedding ring has a camera in it. Everyone else on the show is a paid actor. They all take cues from Christof. And all of his interactions with people have been programmed to further program him to continue his role on this show and not try to leave. And as it continues, you see him receiving fake news, not just on the radio, but through the actors who've been told what to tell him to get him to accept the things that aren't passing the reality sniff test. I mean, it's as if there are all these hints that he's living in a fake world, but every single person around him has been so programmed and conditioned to reinforce Truman not asking questions about how obviously made up things are, that they're all using psychological and emotional manipulation techniques to keep him from even asking questions, let alone figuring out the truth. I mean, at one point you even see a sign in the school library about how the materials are not allowed to be taken home even though it's a set. So the only person that and think about taking home the materials would be what, Truman? Right? As if there's anything in that library that's not a completely controlled version of everything. Whatever they want him to think, whatever the lens is that he's supposed to view the world through, he is surrounded by all the time. And it just gets reinforced through all of these actors around him.
Why do you think that Truman has never come close to discovering the true nature of his world until now?
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
Truman was so programmed and so conditioned that by the time he turned 18, he just accepted the reality with which he was presented, and he never attempted to leave this place that he's in. So the audience knows already that everything's fake, but we get our first whiff of just how conditioned Truman is to accept this fake reality when a studio light falls from the top of the set and crash lands on his street. And it's obviously a studio light, and it's labeled Sirius 9 Canis Major. So it's the dog star. Which, anything else that Freemasons or David Icke might say about it, the point that I'm trying to make for the purposes of this video is that Truman is not only the star of the show, he's basically a trained dog.
What would you do if I said I didn't want meatball today?
I'd ask for identification. See you tomorrow, Truman.
Probably.
So he is the dog star. And as soon as he gets in his car after this happens, the radio announcer gives him a fake cover story about how a plane is shedding parts over Sea Haven, which is perfect because it's just another level of conditioning in the fear of travel, which plays into the continuous goal of further conditioning Truman not to ever try to leave Sea Haven. And it probably is something that happens to him on a daily basis. They have to keep conditioning him not to leave. And dogs are prominently featured throughout the movie in this way. In fact, at the beginning of this scene, you have the neighbor's dog, Pluto, named for the god of the underworld, just by the way, jumping on Truman right before this light falls. Then when he gets into town before work, he goes to buy his magazines, which he apparently does every day. And the person in front of him, in every scene that happens, you'll notice, always buys a dog fancy magazine. It's another reference to this dog star, which is Truman, conditioned, programmed, just like a dog. I mean, the second time he does it, there's a man standing behind him holding up a newspaper, blazing the headline, "Who Needs Europe?" So it's more media conditioning for Truman not to leave the island. I mean, even the acronym on the bus system for Sea Haven is Sea Haven Island Transportation, which spells sit, as in sit, Ubu, sit, good dog.
Sit, Ubu, sit. Good dog.
Everything in the world around him is used as constant reinforcement for what Truman is supposed to think and feel and do to be and exist in this reality that he's in. And it becomes apparent very fast that fear and trauma-based programming are the primary ways that they are doing that to him. Right at the beginning, his co-worker tries to get Truman to go sell insurance on some imaginary island that doesn't exist to reinforce Truman's fear of the water, which they've programmed into him since he was little. When Kristoff wrote Truman's dad out of the show by having him drown when Truman was a little kid, so he would be forever afraid of the water and not leave Sea Haven, right? There's even a scene where he's telling his supposed best friend Marlin that he wants to get out of his insurance job and travel and see the world, and Marlin spends the whole time telling him how great his job is because it's a desk job and everyone knows that's the greatest, and he should just stay put in his obviously unfulfilling life, which is not what a real friend should do, but it's what people do to each other in real life all the time. I mean, I feel like this scene is straight out of probably many people listening right now's lives. It's happened to me and mine. And it literally takes place on a road that goes nowhere. It's a dead-end road. Basically, anytime Truman questions the status quo, even a little bit, there's always some actor or the television is there or the radio. There's always some media or some person that's there to reinforce the status quo and reinforce the program. To really bring this point home, there's a flashback scene to a college dance where Truman wasn't allowed to dance with the girl he actually liked. But they're playing the T-Rex song 20th Century Boy in the background, which features the chorus 20th Century Toy, I want to be your boy, 20th Century Toy, which is about Truman, but it's really not just about Truman. It's actually just really a statement on humans as a psychological product of the 20th century in the programming that took place through the advent of Hollywood and television and later the internet. And there's so much that can be said about media programming. I mean, it first of all fills people with lack. I mean, this idea that's constantly being put out there that you need something all the time. You're hungry? Eat all this crap, you know, or you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not skinny enough, whatever. You know, here's what's important. Here's what you should think and feel is important. Here's what you shouldn't think about or think is important. And oh, live your entire life fearing death. That's another one. Definitely put that in there. I mean, this is how media has been used. I mean, Aaron even was looking through the newspaper archives and came across an ad for a face mask.
Oh, hey, you back? Cool. What's going on? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought you might like that one. Yeah. Well, oh, I know.